Madam Presiding Member, I make that 10 o'clock.
Thank you, Chris. Bore da, croeso. Good morning. I'd like to welcome everyone to the hybrid meeting of Council. The Council meeting is being broadcast live over the internet and will be available to view online now and in the future. We welcome the use of Welsh language at meetings. I've had no request to speak Welsh today, so this meeting will be conducted in English only. Members in the chamber, please be aware that we're all on camera and you may be visible on screen when people around you are speaking. And please remember to speak clearly into your microphones. Members participating remotely, can you please refrain from using the chat function and instead use the raised hand icon to indicate when you want to speak. And please remember to keep your microphones muted when you're not talking. May I remind members that as per the statutory guidance made under Section 4 of the Local Government Wales Measure 2011 and our formally adopted hybrid meeting policy, any member attending the meeting remotely must be able to be seen and heard by members and officers who are attending the meeting, as well as by members of the public that are viewing the meeting. So can I ask you all to please use your cameras for the duration? Moving on to the agenda item 1, attendance. Democratic Services will be making a note of members' attendance in the meeting, but should you lose connection, could you possibly leave a comment in the chat bar on your return to ensure that this is picked up? Apologies for absence is agenda item number 2. Dominique, have we any apologies, please?
I've had apologies from Councillors Ron Burnett, Richard Clark, Giles Davis and Jason O'Connell.
And Councillor Sue Walton sent her apologies. Any other apologies? Councillor Rose Matthews, any other apologies? Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Stella Harris, the Monitoring Officer and Assistant Chief Legal Officer, have you any advice for members, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. In relation to agenda item number 12, the Statement of Gambling Policies, my advice to you is that you would have a personal interest if you have any association with the Aneurin Bevan Health Board as they have been consulted in relation to the statement. And haven't been made aware, following an email sent, that there are any declarations regarding that. But just to confirm. Yeah, okay. And with regard to agenda item number 13, all members have a personal interest in relation to the family absence policy. So could all members please confirm that interest?
Just raise your hands to confirm that we have an interest.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I'm not aware of any other interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Della. That takes us to agenda item 4, which is the confirmation of the Council minutes on the 17th of September 2024. These are starting on page 5 of the agenda. Members, could you possibly state whether you have anything to raise in relation to the minutes? If not, I will take them as approved. Thank you. They are approved. Agenda item 5, update on actions. Members, the updates on what has been done to implement our previous decisions start on page 35 of the agenda. Could you possibly indicate whether you have any questions or comments? Can I ask members... Sorry, my microphone. Can you ask members to agree to note the update on actions, please? Thank you, members. They noted. Agenda item 6 is the receipt of petitions. There are no petitions today, so we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is the public question time, and there are no public questions. So we move on to agenda item number 8, the announcements from the leader and the Chief Executive. Leader, do you have any announcements, please?
Thank you, Presiding Member. 4 announcements from me today. First of all, a big congratulations to all involved in the TVA Awards held on Friday. A specific mention for Leo Morton and Bex Forrest, who won special awards from Lord Lieutenant. And there were some really great stories of the dedication of volunteers in our community, and which is a great source of strength in our communities, of course. So congratulations to everyone nominated and all the winners, and indeed everyone who plays a part in the organisations that were mentioned. Second of all, condolences of the Council on the passing of Kerry Waters, the head teacher of Pontnewydd Primary School. Kerry's been a much-loved and respected head teacher in Torvine for 16 years now, and having worked with him, I know he'll be greatly missed. I'm sure you'll join me in offering condolences to his family, colleagues, and all of those who knew him. Thirdly, I just want to say a big thank you to residents and crews for the progress that's been made in recycling across Torvine, with over a 6% rise in our performance. And can I thank residents for their patience while the red bags are being introduced. These red bags will take plastics, cans, tins and cartons. They'll have a lower replacement cost, will be cheaper in the long term. They're closable, so hopefully will result in less wind-blown litter. They're foldable, so easier to store. And together, this can keep us moving forward towards a 7% target without the need to change collection frequencies. So just like to say a big thank you for residents for their help in that, and also for the crews for their hard work. We've introduced weekly cardboard recently, which has been another improvement in the collection service. There will be roadshows and leaflets out to all homes, just to keep us moving together towards that target, to make Torvine more sustainable, to increase our recycling rates without having to change collection frequencies. So a big thank you to the residents and crews for all your hard work in that. Lastly, there's a Civic Award this morning nominated by Councillor Chris Chew. Rudy and Lane Thompson were keen to raise some money towards purchasing a new rugby and football kit for their school, Ysgol Bryn Onnon. They've always enjoyed litter picking, so they decided to do a sponsored litter pick over the summer holidays. The challenge that they set was to collect 20 bags of rubbish over the 6 weeks. Along with their 2-year-old sister Harley and some help from friends, they managed to collect 20 bags and received an amazing £250 in sponsorship. So along with generous sponsors from Phil Anslow Bus Company, Heritage Funeral Service and Ruckham Mull, they were able to raise enough for a new school rugby football kit, with some left over to make some new, purchase some new sports items for the school too. So I'd like to invite Rudy and Lane forward, along with Councillor Chew, and just say a big thank you for all your help.
Thank you, Leader. Well done, boys. Chief Executive, do you have any announcements, please?
Nothing to add, thank you, Madam Presiding Member.
Thank you very much. That takes us to agenda item 9, which is the Annual Report Governance and Audit Committee on page 37 of your agenda. Mrs Catherine Peggington, Chair of the Governance and Audit Committee. Welcome to the meeting, and could you deliver your report, please?
Good morning, Presiding Member. Good morning, everybody else. I'm Catherine Peggington, and I'd like to thank you for inviting me along this morning to present the annual report of the Governance and Audit Committee. I've chaired this committee for the past 4 years, but this is the first time this has been done, and it's as a result of the whole committee doing a self-evaluation and effectiveness of the Audit Committee. The idea is to raise the profile and promote the work that we undertake within Torvine. The full report, the work undertaken, is within your papers, and I'll assume that you have read it. It's important that the Council has an independent Governance and Audit Committee that follows best practice. The committee is the primary means by which full Council obtains assurance that governance, risk management and control systems are in place and are effective. We are a committee of 8 members, 5 elected members and 3 lay members, of which I am one. We undertake training and attend networking events within Wales. We abide by the Code of Conduct the same as all elected members. Last year we met on 5 occasions, and all the meetings were hybrid in nature. We always have a monitoring officer present to support us, and various other officers and heads of departments attend according to the items on our agenda. The work and activity we undertook in 2023-24 is shown in section 4.1 within the report, with more information on each section on the following pages. As a committee, we continue to monitor and oversee the actions contained in the reports from the independent, internal and external regulators covering all council departments that contribute towards the effective and reliable governance work of the council. We acknowledge that the work is ongoing and we intend to continue to monitor progress where needed. Having an effective governance and audit committee is a key component of the council's overall arrangements for robust governance. This report provides assurance that this is the case. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank all the officers who submitted reports and responded to answers from the committee members. This has enhanced the work of the committee, and thank you all for listening. Are there any other questions?
Councillor Peter Jones.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I sit as one of the councillors on this committee, and the councillors do a fine job, but I'd just like to acknowledge the real hard work that the three lay members, Mrs Pedgerton, Mr Rees and Mr Keller, do to run this committee. It's an excellent job. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your support as well.
Thank you. Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I too should declare I'm a member of this committee, and it's simply to sort of say that obviously if any members have any points of issue or concern that they would want to be brought into that, then that's part of our role as members of the committee. That has happened on one or two occasions, but it was just to sort of highlight that we are your representatives rather than doing the whole job for you, as it were. So we do welcome the input from other members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Councillor Happy.
Just to thank members of the committee for their hard work this year, particularly to the Chair, and also to thank them for this report. Audit, something that's invaluable in this council, and you know, strong governance and audit processes are something that at the end of the day keep us all safe, and also keep those who live here and pay their rates safe too. So thank you for your hard work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you. The recommendations start on page 42 of the report, which is at 7.1, and it is to note the work of the Governance and Audit Committee for the 23-24 municipal year. Are you all happy to note those reports? Thank you very much. Thank you. That report is carried. Thank you, Mrs. Pegington.
Thank you very much.
Welcome.
We'll be well to you next year.
Nice
Thank
to see
you.
Thank you. That takes us to agenda item 10, which is the Torvine Local Development Plan Monitoring Report for 2024, and this starts on page 43 of the agenda. Robert Murray, Principal Planner. Gareth Beer, could you deliver the report, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. This report is to cover the annual Monitoring Report 2024 for Torvine County Council. Following adoption of the Local Development Plan, the Council has a statutory duty under Section 76 of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act 2004 to produce an annual monitoring report for submission to the Welsh Government by the 31st of October each year. The purpose of the AMR is to monitor the effectiveness of the strategy and policy framework in the LDP and to consider whether amendments to these are required and whether a review of the plan should take place. The purpose of this report is to seek approval of the 2024 Annual Monitoring Report of the Torvine Local Development Plan for its submission to the Welsh Government. There have been some contextual changes which have occurred over the last year, and these are covered in Section 3 of the report. Of particular note is the increased focus on green infrastructure introduced in Planning Policy Wales 12 and approval of new supplementary planning guidance by this Council covering green infrastructure, biodiversity, ecosystem resilience and development, and site design, master planning and development briefs. Section 4 of the report covers the local development plan, strategy and policy monitoring and makes note of the monitoring results identified between the 1st of April 2023 and 31st of March 2024. Of particular note is the housing trajectory forecasts for the delivery of an average of 287 dwellings per annum over the next 5 years. Of the 4,700 dwellings building target over the planned period, 4,099 dwellings, or 87% of the total, has been built, of which 2,700 were market dwellings and 1,300 were affordable dwellings. The remaining 600 dwellings, 12.8%, are expected to be delivered within the next 2 to 3 years, with a housing structure forecast for the delivery of the average of 287 dwellings per annum being continued. The affordable housing delivered during the plan period is actually over the planned target, representing 116% of that forecast. Other issues raised in the AMR are obviously dealt with in the report, and of the 11 of the 18 local development plan objectives, the indicators indicate that LDP policies are being implemented effectively and no further action is required. Of 7 of the LDP objectives, the indicators suggest that LDP policies are not currently being achieved, and that in relation to 3 of these objectives, which are housing, employment and minerals, the situation cannot be addressed without a full review of the plan. Based on this action to be taken following the decision of the councils are detailed in section 7 of the report. These are, in summary: 1, that the Torvine Local Development Plan 2024 AMR will be submitted to the Welsh Government by the 31st of October 2024 and also be published on the Council's website. And further to this, work will continue on the replacement local development plan, including further research, production of background evidence relating to the growth and spatial options to form the preferred strategy stage of the replacement local development plan. Due to further work required on developing growth options, there is a need to develop a new timetable for the plan preparation of the replacement plan, and this timetable will be part of a revised delivery agreement, which will be looked to present to Council for agreement by the end of this year. So to conclude, I therefore present this report for your consideration with the recommendations detailed in section 8 on page 53. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you, Robert. Any questions this morning? Can't see anybody raising their hand. I'll take you to the recommendations on page 52 then. They're at 8.1 and there's 2 recommendations. One is to approve the Torvine Local Development Plan Annual Monitoring Report 2024 attached to Appendix A and its submission to the Welsh Government on or before the 31st of October, and agreed to delegate the final minor amendment of the Annual Monitoring Report 2024 to the team leader, Planning, Policy and Implementation, prior to submission to the Welsh Government and publication of the Council's website. Do you all agree those recommendations? Thank you. Anyone against those recommendations? Any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Barry. Thank you, Robert. Takes us to agenda item 11, which is the annual self-assessment and wellbeing report 23-24, which starts on page 91 of your agenda. Stephen Vickers, the Chief Executive, could you deliver this report for us, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Torvine Council recognises that continuous self-assessment is important to ensure that we remain responsive and accountable to the expectations of our members and the needs of our communities. This report, set out in Appendix 1, is our statutory annual self-assessment and wellbeing report for the financial year 23-24. The report is one of the ways in which we are held to account for the work that we are privileged to do. Section 4 of the report highlights progress made against the Council's agreed 9 county plan priorities, our wellbeing objectives, which were adopted by Council in December 22. This is, of course, only an overview of the progress made throughout the year. Should further detail be of interest, I would refer members to our annual delivery plan, which was presented to Council in July 24. The report balances the progress made by the Council over the last year, set against the challenges we face both in year and into the future. As we express repeatedly, our successes are as a result of the dedication, creativity, passion and hard work that exists across our organisation and within our communities which we serve. The wider context is that public services will remain challenged for the foreseeable future. We're alive to the fact that there is no great influx of additional resources on the horizon. We are preparing for that, though, with increasingly innovative approaches that will help us to continue to improve well-being and tackle inequality across our borough. This report, therefore, provides a focus on the way the Council is continuing to drive forward our community's approach to deliver greater resilience for our communities and residents, enabling people to live with greater independence, pushing forward with our commitment to fulfilling our role as a Marmot Council to better plan and improve services over the longer term in order to tackle the intergenerational challenges associated with inequality, and taking forward our innovative plans to work more closely with Blaenau Gwent Council, where we'll continue to explore the potential for making improvements, finding efficiencies, and most importantly, to build greater resilience across both authorities. Members will see that the report sets out the progress made against our complementary characteristics of an outstanding council framework. Although we haven't made any changes to the framework in the previous year, it remains iterative and is being reviewed as part of the work that we're undertaking during the discovery phase with Blaenau Gwent. Members will also see that throughout our report there is further context setting on how the Council integrates what it does through internal planning processes and joins that up with the work of our partners, meets our legislative requirements, plans our finances to support the delivery of our county plan, consults on our performance, monitors progress and seeks to further improve on those arrangements, and most significantly sets out some of the context for the development of our longer-term master plan for Torvine. The report was received by the Governance and Audit Committee on the 3rd of October. This is part of an overall statutory process for producing our annual report, providing further rigour and assurance that the Council is doing all it can to meet its performance and statutory requirements. To do justice to the extensive work of the Council and to ensure that we meet our statutory requirements, the report is unavoidably sizable. We have, though, developed a summary document which is part of the overall drive to make information about the Council's performance more accessible. That's set out in Appendix 2. Overall, I hope that members of the Council recognise the ambition in our plans. They can see that our approach, though different to many other councils across Wales, is the right way to take Torvine forward. The self-assessment process is vital for Torvine's improvement journey, and it creates the right culture for us as an organisation, one that is open to challenge and always looking to learn and improve. And I hope that the report conveys this message. Before I hand back to you, Madam Presiding Member, I just want to thank Tom Roberts and his team, and in particular Leanne, who's hiding up in the public gallery there, and who authored the report, for their hard work and support. I'm joined by Tom and the wider leadership team here today. We're happy to take questions or comments that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Executive. Are there any questions for the Chief Executive? Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. I think it's a very detailed report, a lot of information in there, and I welcome the preparation of a summary. I had a couple of comments and observations, if that's helpful, if I could go through those. And I don't necessarily anticipate the answers would come because I may need to come back, but there was mention made on page 108 of health determinants research collaborative funding to enhance capacity and capability. I guess my question is really how much, how long for, and what do we anticipate that being used for? Is it helpful if I go through all points and then, or do you want to deal with them one by one?
David?
Hello, Councillor. Apologies. I think there were too many microphones on that. I can pick up the question around HDRC. So the HDRC Health Determinants Research Collaboration is some funding that we have received from the UK Government, from the National Institute of Health Research. Well, one of only 2 local authorities in Wales, the first whoever to receive this funding. It's £5 million spread over a 5-year period, so it's £1 million per year. And it is a collaborative, so the majority of that funding goes towards research conducted by the universities, to our work with the Health Board, as well as to the data that we need to collect to make that approach work. The whole purpose behind the HDRC is that within that broad communities approach that we've discussed a few times to wellbeing, we need to really understand a few things. We need to understand what the data says is happening at a local level and at a borough level, but how that data actually translates in practice to people's perceptions, and the research allows us to combine those two different elements. So data sets coming in, perceptions coming in from the HDRC, which allows us then to frame real research around what's actually driving wellbeing in the borough. So the HDRC is one of those linchpins that sits as part of that broad communities approach to wellbeing. So, as I say, £5 million over 5 years spread across multiple partners.
Thank you very much. Yeah, that's very helpful. Then on to page 162. I note that the staff skills audit has been done in relation to Welsh. I know it's probably not a statutory requirement, but I wondered if there was any consideration of skills audit around other languages, which again may help us in terms of providing services to those coming into our community.
It's not something we've explored currently. As you know, as you say, the Welsh language element is a statutory duty on us. It's something that I'll pick up with our community cohesion team and understand how far we can gain value from doing that sort of skills audit. So I'll take that away as an action.
Thank you. Then on page 163, I was trying to make some sense of the budget figures, 319.6 million revenue budget, then an actual spend of 337.1 million, which I think probably included capital. I just felt it could be a little clearer as to making sure that figures match up. Yeah, I don't think we are 36 million in the red in relation to that, but it could read that way, and hence my inquiry.
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, Councillor, and make sure that we're clearer and that all the information in the report is accurate.
Okay, only two other little points. Apologies. First one, the next one was page 167. We talk about the Torvine plan being mapped to other Gwent local authorities. So is that then translated into sort of a common approach in terms of the Gwent PSB?
I think the answer to that is that wherever there are opportunities for us to work at scale across Gwent, we will always explore those. That will include through the work of the PSB where it is possible, and the PSB is evolving that way of working. It's true to say that in practice it's probably easier to work collaboratively with other councils, individual councils across Gwent, which of course the PSB also helps us to do. Working as a five authority to step forward together is a particular challenge, but it certainly is something that we'll continue to explore, and we'll do so where we possibly can, particularly, for example, when we're trying to work more closely with partners who do represent across all five authorities, such as the police or the NHS. So the answer is that we'll do that where we possibly can, including through the PSB, but it's not always as easy as we would hope.
Okay, thank you, Madam Presiding Member, and thank you, Chief Executive. My last point as a question was on page 167, where it mentions complaints, and noting that we have relatively few compared to other local authorities. Obviously, that's a statement, but not backed up in any sense, so it would be helpful if there was some clarification around that. And also, then, does that number of complaints coming out, do you feel that actually helps us improve our service delivery?
Yeah, I think some of that is just simply about the different approaches that we take in terms of managing complaints. We're quite proactive in trying to ensure that when we hear from residents or from members that we are as responsive as we can possibly be before it formalises through the complaints process. But where those processes exhaust, then naturally we'll go into the stage 1 or stage 2 complaints process. But importantly, and I think reflective of the question that you asked, we're always looking to learn from any stage that within that complaints process or pre the complaints process to ensure that we are as operated as effectively and as efficient as we possibly can. And of course that's very much reflected in the way that we report our performance through our performance framework.
Thank you very much. And finally, I noticed on page 156 the mention of various rebel groups. So I wondered if you had any room for rebel members. I don't necessarily expect an answer at this point, but I would like to commend the report and all the work that's been done to complete it.
Rebel members are always welcome in this council.
We have a few of those. Thank you. Councillor Stewart-Ashley.
I just want to make a general point. Obviously, we've taken this through scrutiny last year, and I'm just wondering how, having done under David's chairship the global climate change and nature emergency recently, how you filter in the mean whale type scrutiny. It's a good process you've got here, Chief Executive, but how you take stuff that's ongoing, because obviously we've got a lot of scrutiny going on. I just wonder, obviously over the year, there must be a lot of stuff that comes at you that, and you say, well, this is good and we need to incorporate. I just wonder how that process works.
I think it can be a bit clunky, Councillor, which I think is behind the context of your question, really, because yes, we will have reports coming through scrutiny at different times of the year, including, for example, around our climate and nature emergency and responses to that, our plans around our climate and nature responses. So I think what we will certainly be doing, in fact I was just speaking this morning to one of the members of leadership around this, is to see whether or not there's a way that actually we could start to bring some of that reporting together in a way that ensures that it still receives all of an appropriate level of scrutiny, but also that it starts to join things up a little bit, because it feels to me that it's a little bit out of sequence under the current circumstances, and there may be a way, although of course there may be some challenges around this, that we can start to bring some of that together in a more efficient way. So I hope that sort of answers the question, but I recognise that it is a bit clunky at the moment.
It was, so if I may come back briefly, Chair, that was, but you've got the sort of general stuff which your scrutiny process does, and then obviously we've got the individual stuff from the subject areas. No, that sounds a good process. It's we're kind of maturing the process, as it were, and that I would expect something like that to happen.
Thank you, Councillor Ashley. Councillor Abney Hunt.
Thank you, Presiding Member. I really would like to commend these reports. As sort of big overarching reports, the scale of them really makes you realise how many services the Council runs, how much Council staff do in and with our communities, and the complexity of those services. Very often, political debate boils those down to simplistic slogans, but actually the complexity of the services that are provided are huge. And I think there's also some really great examples that bring that overarching information to life within the reports. And I think that the summary documents at page 183 I'd really draw people's attention to, because they're a good way of making it more accessible. The big documents can sometimes be a little bit hard to get to grips with, but I think that the summary document helps give different people different levels to jump in at. I would like to commend the wellbeing objectives. I think they've stood the test of time. They're cross-cutting. They're based in our communities. They recognise the need for us to be more and more enabling and catalysing as an organisation, and not just stick to the superhero model, rescuing the person from the tower. I won't use the analogy I used in the members' seminar, because it's a public meeting, but recognising the need for us to move to that. Recognising the value of the early intervention and prevention work that we do, and that can be across so many different service areas, some of which can sometimes seem, quite back office and quite administrative. But the way, for example, we do things like revenues and benefits in this council, leading the way on a single point of access for people for the Welsh administered benefits, I think isn't just administrative. That's a way that recognises the value of humans and the impact that we can have on people's lives. the work of our community connectors, for example, the work of organisations like MIST in our communities to both improve and try and stem demand on public services, but also improve outcomes for people. There is huge examples of work going on around the council that can sometimes go unnoticed, because sometimes these are dealing with very acute services, and unless people have a demand for those acute services personally, they might not witness those services. They just witness the universal service. It doesn't mean that work isn't hugely important, because it can really both transform people's lives and help make the services more sustainable in the long run. I welcome the self-assessment part of this. I think we've got an honest approach to self-assessment now in this council. We're ambitious, we're willing to be radical and break the mould, and we're never satisfied with the status quo if that's not the best way forward, and we're determined to make progress. And I say that because I recognise those high targets and never being satisfied can probably feel intense at times. I know the way that me and Stephen try and lead on these things is quite intense and quite demanding on members of staff. So I just wanted to end by saying a big thank you to those council officers, to those members of staff. They do a huge amount of work. They go above and beyond the call of duty. And at the end of the day, the services that we offer, as all public services, are the sum total of their efforts. So I may never appear satisfied. Stephen's probably the same. We may try and push for more all the time, but that doesn't mean we don't recognise the hard work that goes on in very difficult circumstances by those members of staff to try and get the best for our communities and for our residents.
Thank you, Leader. Don't see any other hands up or questions, so I'll take you to the recommendations that are on page 98 of the report at 8.1. And we ask to approve the annual self-assessment and wellbeing report as set out in the Appendix 1 on the adoption of the newly defined wellbeing objective in 23-24 self-assessment and wellbeing report as in paragraph 3.5.7 of the report. Can I have those recommendations approved, please? All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much, Chief Executive. Takes us to agenda item 12, which is the approval of the Council's Statement of Gambling Principles, which is on page 191 in your agenda. Robin Gray, Senior Licensing Officer, could you deliver the report for us, please?
Thank you. So the Gambling Act 2005 came fully into effect on the 1st of September 2007. It brought the majority of commercial gambling together into a single regulatory framework and established a dedicated national regulator, which is the Gambling Commission, as well as local licensing authorities that have responsibility for managing gambling locally in line with local circumstances. It therefore established a strong element of local decision-making and accountability in gambling regulation. The Council, in its role as licensing authority, has responsibility for the administration and enforcement of premises licences, small society lottery registrations, temporary and occasional use notices, permits that allow gambling activities in pubs, clubs and family entertainment centres, and also prize gaming permits. The Council has a statutory obligation under Section 349 of the Gambling Act before each successive period of 3 years to prepare and publish a statement of the principles that it proposes to apply in exercising its functions under the Act during that 3-year period. This is the authority's mandate for managing the local gambling provision. In addition, the Act gives the Council power to make a resolution regarding the issue of casino premises licences in its district. So the report before Council today refers to these functions. The first aspect of the report relates to the Statement of Gambling Principles. The current statement is being applied for the current 3-year period that began on the 31st of January 2022, but a new statement must now be published for the next 3-year period that will commence on 31st of January 2025. A draft statement is being brought before Council for its consideration. This is Appendix B of the report, which is set on pages 199 to 264 of the report pack. The existing policy has been effective in guiding officers, members, licensed and other authorisation holders, as well as members of the public in how the Council will apply its discretion and use its powers. This therefore provided the basis for the new draft policy, although references, data and dates were updated where needed, but there is no proposed changes to any meaning of any principle within the statement. As required by the Act, the draft policy was subject to consultation with the Chief Officer of Police, persons representing the interests of persons carrying on gambling businesses in Torfaen, as well as those likely to be affected by the exercise of the Council's functions under the Act. 2 responses to the consultation were received. The first was from a business that had ceased trading, and they simply wished to advise the Council that they had no comments to make. And the second was from an Iron Bevan University Health Board. Within its response, which is included as Appendix A, the Health Board gave some recommendations on the policy, and those have been incorporated into the draft policy, which is Appendix B. The Health Board has subsequently confirmed that they are happy with the approach that has been proposed. The draft policy was considered by the Licensing Committee at its meeting on the 26th of September 2024, and the committee resolved to agree the draft statement of principles for the period 2025 to 2028, and they recommended the approval of the policy to Council. The determination of the statement of principles is a function of the full Council, though. The second aspect of the report relates to the casino resolution. The Gambling Act gives the licensing authority power to make a resolution to not issue casino premises licences. Such a resolution applies to the whole district and applies for 3 years, although it can be revoked by further resolution. Any principle can be taken into account in reaching a decision not to issue casino premises licences. From 2007 until January 2019, the Council made resolutions every 3 years to not issue casino premises licences, but since January 2019, no such resolution has been made, as it has been viewed that the ability to consider applications on a case-by-case basis, particularly in terms of large leisure complexes that might be of economic benefit to the borough, should not be removed by making a new resolution. So the current stance to not make a resolution is set out in the current statement of principles, and that has been unchanged in the draft statement that has been prepared and subject to consultation, and that is Appendix B. The Licensing Committee also considered the making of a resolution at its meeting on the 26th of September, and resolved then to recommend to Council that no resolution should be made to not issue casino premises licences, and the approach previously taken to consider each application on a case-by-case basis should be continued. The recommendations are set out in Section 8 of the report, and I should apologise for the double negative in the second recommendation, but it is correct. So, thank you.
Thank you. Any comments or questions on this report? Can't see any. So the recommendations start on page 195 at 8.1. Can I ask members whether they agree with the recommendations, please? Thank you. Anyone against those recommendations? Are there any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much, Robin. That takes us to agenda item 13, which is the family absence policy for elected members, which starts on page 265 of the agenda. Tom Roberts, Business and Democratic Support Services Manager. Could you deliver this report, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member, and good morning, members. All councils in Wales are required to put in place a member's family absence policy, complying with statutory guidance issued by Welsh Government relating to absence from local authority meetings due to family absence. The guidance requires our family absence policy to set out members' entitlement and responsibilities under 5 distinct types of absence relating to maternity absence, newborn absence, adopter's absence, new adoption absence, and parental absence. In doing so, the policy provides entitlement to elected members who have babies or become responsible for looking after children to be able to continue as members with a recognised legitimate absence in an open fashion rather than being potentially subject to criticism for not fulfilling their duties as members. The policy is intended to support the well-being and performance of elected members and to enhance diversity and representation. In summary, the policy outlines an elected member's entitlement when taking leave for the following reasons: maternity absence. Members giving birth are entitled to up to 26 weeks maternity leave. Newborn absence. If the elected member is a biological father or nominated carer, there is entitlement of up to 2 weeks. Adopter's absence. A member who adopts a child through an approved adoption agency should be entitled to take up to 26 weeks adoption leave. New adoption absence. A member who is in a relationship with a person who is adopting a child may take 2 weeks new adoption absence. And parental absence. A member shall be entitled to parental absence if they become legally responsible for the care of a child under the age of 14. The policy sets out the role of the Head of Democratic Services, who will take the responsibility for dealing with notifications of family absence, and their role in informing the presiding member, the Chair of the Democratic Services Committee, and the leader of each political group of the local authority. Finally, the policy covers considerations relating to the withdrawal of a request for family absence, the related appeals process, duties whilst the member is on family absence, remuneration and political balance. The draft policy was reviewed by the Democratic Service Committee on the 17th of October, and what came from that was a wider conversation about other types of leaves, such as carers or bereavement. I have given a commitment to the committee to look into this in due course. I'll hand back to the presiding member at that point, and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Are there any questions for this report, Tom? I don't see any. Thank you, Tom. The recommendations start on page 266 of the report. Can I ask members if they agree with these recommendations, please? Are there any members against the recommendations? Are there any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you very much, Tom. And Tom remains for this next agenda item, which is agenda item 14, proposed changes to the petition scheme on page 275 in the agenda. Tom, would you mind giving this report, please?
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Welsh councils are required to develop and publish a petition scheme and review the scheme from time to time. Torfaen Council recognises and values the contributions of local people and active democratic public participation as essential to ensure that the needs and aspirations of local people are at the heart of decision making. The petition scheme allows members of the public to submit petitions either as a paper hard copy or via e-petition, which can be created, signed and submitted online. Guidance on how to submit either a paper or e-petition is available on the Council's website. Following consultation with the Democratic Services Committee, Council approved the petition scheme on the 28th of June 2022, and it was subsequently included at Appendix 24 of the Council's Constitution. Having reviewed our petition scheme alongside the scheme in other authorities, a number of proposed amendments are suggested, which are set out in Appendix 1. The significant changes are a minimum signatory number is proposed following a number of petitions received by the Council where there was no evidence of significant support from the residents of Torfaen. However, if there is clear public support on a matter in a smaller area, discretion would be applied regarding this figure of 100 signatories. Secondly, a clarification around the process of presenting petitions to Council. And finally, the inclusion of a more comprehensive list of issues that would disqualify a petition from being accepted by Council. Furthermore, following a review of the draft policy of the Democratic Services Committee on the 17th of October, further assurances were sought through the scheme that it could only be applied by petitioners who are living or working within Torfaen. This has therefore been made more explicit within the petition scheme. I'll hand back to the Chair and I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions for Tom on this report? Councillor David Williams.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Thank you for the clarification, Tom. I think it is helpful that there is a level of discretion because I can understand that for quite local issues, getting 100 people may be a little difficult. So I'm glad that that provision has been included and will be taken into consideration. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? Thank you, Tom. The recommendations are on page 276 of the report at 6.1. Can I ask members whether they agree with these recommendations, please? Are there any members against the recommendations? And any abstentions? That report is carried. Thank you, Tom. That takes us to agenda item 15, motions on notice. There are no motions on notice. So we'll move on to agenda item 16, which is the members' question time. We have a number of questions this morning, and we kick off with number 1, which is from Councillor David Thomas to Councillor Daniels.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Morning, Councillor Daniels. Does the Executive Member know what exactly Bronavon intend to do with Llanravon Care Home and when? If there are no plans yet, wouldn't it be a great idea, given the fact that we have lost yet another care home in Torfaen, that Torfaen Council and Bronavon could work together in a collaboration to reopen Llanravon Care Home?
Councillor Daniels.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the question, Councillor Thomas. As members may recall, Bronavon purchased the former care home last year following its closure. Care Inspectorate Wales had taken the very rare decision to deregister the care home after serious concerns were raised about the quality of care being provided by the private company that owned it. Bronavon have since been developing a proposal for the future of Llanravon Court, and we saw an update from Bronavon recently. And from that update, I understand that Bronavon are hoping to develop the site into a vibrant and well-serviced community for older residents. Importantly, they are looking at ways to build community support and provision into the designs of the site, rather than relying on service providers. This will be a step change from the very traditional retirement home that currently forms much of their offer to older residents, and in principle is something that I'd welcome. I previously referred to the changing landscape of the residential care market, where we're seeing great demand for higher needs nursing and EMI, elderly mentally infirm, provision rather than general residential. This is because more and more people are opting to remain in their own homes for as long as they're able to do so, and as a consequence we're seeing not only a greater demand for domiciliary care, but also demand for a greater availability of homes which enable people to remain independent, socially connected and safe for as long as possible. At this stage, what's being proposed by Bronavon is very much in line with those demands we're seeing and would present a very good use for the former care home. I will, of course, want to see much greater detail before confirming that this is something that I would recommend we support, and whether it's something that would receive support of Welsh Government and other funders. But at this stage, what they're looking at is very much in line with what the market requires and what we would want as a council, if that answers your question.
Okay, thank you. Question 2, Councillor David Thomas, and Councillor Mandy Owen will answer.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Morning, Councillor Owen. Can the Executive Member clarify regularly mowed and safe access? These phrases were used at the Council meeting on the 23rd of July 24 in response to my question asked about the maintenance of the canal. The canal path is the main cycle route between Cwmbran and Newport. The hedgerows are overgrown and at present dangerous. Low branches and trailing brambles are a danger to cyclists using the route, and also the canal banks are so overgrown that there is no definition between the path and the canal water. Can we please arrange a thorough cutback now nesting season is over?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Thomas. I acknowledge the importance of ensuring the canal path is kept free from overgrowth that may cause obstruction and hazards. The path is extremely well used and provides a route for active travel. The current management regime aims to strike a balance between maintaining the towpath for pedestrians and cyclists, while also considering our responsibility as a council for biodiversity under the Environmental Act 2016. Throughout the growing period, a 1 metre strip of vegetation adjacent to the towpath is cut on a 10-day cycle, which is referenced as regularly mowed and provides safe access. The hedges are cut in the autumn once the grass cutting season is finished. However, if there are any trees or shrubs which are reported or identified as encroaching onto the towpath, they will be cut down earlier in the year. I do urge all members that if they do identify any encroachment onto the towpath or which cause hazards or is dangerous, to please report it to Member Services route, and the team will inspect and deal with any hazards. The wider grassland is managed using an annual cut and collect approach in the late summer. Areas close to the water are left to and cut to protect and enhance biodiversity. And I actually walked across one side of the towpath last week with Councillor Gordon. We went from Two Locks to Newport. Some hedges have already been cut back. There were some branches which were overhanging, so I asked the team to carry out an inspection of this section and cut back any overhanging branches that could present a risk in the coming weeks. I was told that this was inspected last Friday. Some trees and branches that were found to be hampering access were cut back and removed. The team are also due to return to remove some of the overgrowth that could pose a problem in the coming weeks. You should also be aware that the Economy and Environment Scrutiny Committee will be considering the Council's approach to green space management in November, which will present an opportunity for members to review the current arrangements.
Thank you. Question 3 is Councillor David Thomas. I believe the leader will answer in the absence of Councillor Richard Clark.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Morning, Councillor Hunt. I recently attended open days for Cwmbran High and Crossy Killiog School, and to my amazement saw a huge difference in conditions. I clearly understand that one school is vastly older than the other. However, given that both schools in our borough serve the same communities, funded through public resources, why is there a clear disparity in classroom standards, equipment and overall facilities between the two? When the amalgamation of Llantarnam and Fairwater was proposed, the two schools were promised to benefit both areas equally. How does the Council justify this inequality, and what steps are being taken to ensure that, irrespective of the schools they attend, students have access to the same quality of resources and learning environment across the borough?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Thomas. As members will undoubtedly recognise, high-quality education does not rely on buildings alone. To a very large extent, it's what happens in the buildings that ensures our learners achieve their full potential. The dedication and hard efforts of staff in our schools, together with the support of the local authority education service, other council departments, the AS and many others. Buildings and facilities do matter though, and I think this council can be proud of its achievements under the 21st Century Schools programme over the past 2 decades. Councillor Clark answered a very similar question to this one in the summer, so members won't need reminding that under that programme, now called the Sustainable Communities for Learning programme, we have already invested over £121 million in capital programmes in our schools and have plans to do more. Speaking to other councils across the UK, we have punched well above our weight in this, so pound for pound on investment in our schools, we're ahead of the game. If you drive around Torvine at the moment, you cannot fail to see the work on expansion at Crown Bridge, which will be completed this month, the significant progress with learning with the new school building at Mainly Primary School, and the £500,000 additional learning needs and community space at Cwmbran High School. Not to mention, in addition to the investment under the main programme, many smaller grant-funded schemes that have been completed or are now underway across the borough, including but not limited to supporting and community spaces from Abersucken to Trevethin and indeed Llantarnam as well. Of course, we can never be satisfied and want to improve more school buildings more quickly. I'd love to be able to sit here and say that we have unlimited money in our capital programme to do so. However, as elected members, we must be realistic and recognise that that's not the case. It's a long-term programme requiring long-term investment. However, we remain steadfastly committed to delivering improvements in our school sites, whether through the programme or more opportunistically through annual grants. And I will continue to work, and you've got my assurance in this, and lobby national government to make the case for that investment in our schools. I'd like to finish where I started and trust that everyone in the chamber today will join me in recognising the significant work going on in all our schools to ensure that learners reach their full potential.
Thanks, Madam Presiding Member. I do have a supplementary to this question, because I am mainly only concerned with what was promised to Llantarnam and Fairwater. And as the leader said, the Council acknowledges the importance of equal education standards. Can you explain why specific improvements have not already been prioritised at Cwmbran High to match the standards of Crossy? Despite both schools being funded from the same public resources, what timeline can parents and students expect for Cwmbran High to receive the necessary upgrades needed?
Okay, I think we need to separate capital and revenue funding from the answer here. Of course, both schools are funded equally on a revenue basis. The issue here that we're referring to is capital improvements at the schools. We're straining every sinew to make every pound that we can available to make capital improvements in our schools, because I recognise the fact that many schools have been done is of little reassurance to the schools who are still awaiting work. And it's not just Cumberland High, there are other, especially secondary schools, Abersucken, Westmont and St Albans, that I'd love to be able to release capital funding to improve. We will work hard and strain every sinew to make sure that those improvements are able to be made as soon as possible, but I can't promise money that doesn't exist. We have limited ability to raise capital funding, and because we don't have a lot of high-value sites that we can sell, borrowing, of course, has a revenue impact, and what I would hate to do is introduce more capital funding to schools and then reduce their revenue funding, which we've improved over recent years to move well up the table in terms of revenue funding for schools in Torfaen, because at the end of the day, that wouldn't help them to fund the staff that they need to move forward as schools. So you've got my assurance that I will do everything I can to lobby for more capital funding for our schools. I think it should be a priority. I think investment in schools infrastructure is great both for our schools and for our economy as a whole, as well as for the future of our learners. So I'll continue to lobby for more capital funding alongside, of course, Councillor Clark, who is involved in this on a day-to-day basis.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Nick Hall, question 4.
Good morning, Madam Presiding Officer. Good morning, Councillor Daniels. Moving forward after a potential closing of Arthur Jenkins Home in December, please can you reassure me that no plans have been currently made for any form of redevelopment if another suitable care provider is not found? Will our community be given the opportunity to be consulted on any future plans for this site, and if the matter arises? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Haller, and I just want to put on record my thanks to yourself and your ward colleagues for all the support and quite constructive approach you've taken over the past few weeks. I mean, I don't know how long it's been. It's felt like we've been living and breathing this for quite some time now, quite rightly, obviously. As I mentioned at the last full council, all of us have worked and continue to work tirelessly to advocate for the best outcome for those residents at Arthur Jenkins. In last month's council, I did say that the focus has to be on the here and now, and this still is our position. The home closure process is just so complex that it's of the greatest importance that our officers have sole focus on that process and not get sidetracked by any kind of speculation around what will happen to the house if we get to that point, obviously. With that in mind, I can confirm that no discussions have been taking place around the future future development of Arthur Jenkins. And if we do arrive in that situation, we will, of course, engage with yourself and your fellow ward colleagues as representatives for Blaenavon, so that the community can be consulted on future plans for the building.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question 5, Councillor Haller. Councillor Daniel.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Councillor Daniels, please can we have an update on the amended motion that myself and Councillor Janet Jones put in last month to write to the Chancellor to seek reassurances for those pensioners that are incomes close to the threshold for pension credit, but not eligible. Will they receive support as needed as the coming winter period that was approved at last month's full council? What plans have GBC to ease the pressure within our communities that they face by this decision of Westminster?
Again, thanks for the question. As is referred to in the earlier update on actions item, we've written to the Chancellor, and I'll share the reply with everybody as soon as it comes through. I think an important point to make at this point is that the change has yet to take effect. So in terms of demand that we're seeing in the community, we're unlikely to see that at this stage. But as with every other benefit change that that has come down the line that we've anticipated, we will be monitoring our communities and the front doors for any kind of spike in demand or any trends, and I'll refer to that later on. So locally, as part of the motion, our comms team have been sharing and amplifying a drive to encourage eligible people to apply for the pension credit, which crucially will unlock other important benefits such as the winter fuel allowance. And yeah, this is a commitment that we gave in the motion, the amended motion at Council. And I am also anecdotally aware that I think national governments seem to be running a campaign as well. I mean, on various different media, social media, I've been picking up adverts for pension credit and trying to drive people to sign up to it. So hopefully that's a positive on a national scale, that they are trying to get people to sign up to this underclaimed benefit. Through the Social Prosperity Fund, SPF, the Building Resilient Communities team are issuing fuel vouchers to those who are struggling to pay bills and heat their homes. As mentioned, we'll be monitoring the demand they encounter. This is an important front door because this is people who tend to be in crisis or tend to be at the more acute end of things. So we'll be monitoring that to understand whether they're seeing any shift in the demographics being referred for this sort of assistance, because at present, the demand that we see for that particular point of contact is predominantly working age people. So it would be very interesting to see if there's any shift in that particular direction, and we'll obviously be very responsive to that. TVA have previously supported community organisations to deliver warm hubs. The team at TVA will be doing some work to engage with and understand plans organisations have in place for this winter. And I'll seek more information on these plans as they become available. They weren't at the time of writing this answer, but I will follow that up. We're also working very closely with Citizens Advice to monitor any impact of change. Citizens Advice are very well placed to report back on trends in demand that they're seeing across our communities. Indeed, they do so through various different forums and groups that we have. And Mal, who runs Torvine CAB, is fantastic at keeping us in the loop with everything they're seeing, so they're a very, very valuable partner. We're currently supporting them as well with grant applications for projects that might help those who need assistance during the colder months, so more to come hopefully on that in a positive sense, fingers crossed. Finally, we have a range of partners which include Age UK, local RSLs and other community-based groups who we engage with in various different forums. And we'll continue to engage with those organisations to cover as many bases as possible and better understand demand and how we can effectively respond to it. Thank you for the question.
Supplementary answer, please. Thank you for a very comprehensive answer. My concern is that there are people out in the community that are too proud to ask for this funding, that they really need it. You know, how do we get through to those people that are too proud to potentially go for this funding, because obviously they are going to suffer as much as everybody else is, but because of their nature, they don't want to do that. How do we get through to those people?
Yeah, I absolutely see that actually, and it's a, you know, I can anecdotally see it in my own family. You know, it's a very, very frustrating thing, but just it transcends benefits. We're talking health as well. You know, you were talking about a demographic that very much don't want the fuss. They just want to just be and get on. I think that the answer, the best answer I can give to that is those community groups that are in touch with them. So various different older persons forums, community groups actually run from those communities where there is a trust there from those residents that you're talking about. I think that is our best chance of getting them to understand, because you can have that kind of peer-to-peer kind of support going on there, which I think is crucial. Because, yeah, I think there is a kind of a dynamic where yeah, that pride just comes in, and I think that pride is broken down by seeing other people like you accepting that help and seeing that it is really important, and it's not a mission of weakness or kind of failure or something like that. It's just something everybody needs at some point in their life. So I think that's the best answer I can give. I mean, I like to think we're a fairly community-minded council, and we do try and kind of use those connections to the communities to the best of our ability. And we'll continue to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have question 6 from Councillor Nick Holder and Councillor Peter Jones to answer.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Officer. Good morning, Councillor Jones. Next, in March next year, I believe that the Share Prosperity funding that's helped the Off-Road Biking Partnership provide joint borough funding of 0.6 of a police officer time and 0.6 of PCSO to tackle the illegal off-roading that blights our landscape through our borough and adjoining boroughs comes to an end. This initiative has clearly demonstrated positive outcomes in the aid to tackle the situation of the damage to our landscapes. Since this project has been in place, with all the good work that Gwent Police have been doing, it is making a difference that is recognised by commoners and others that use our landscapes. And I ask for the funding to be kept in momentum going and maybe increased, and to lobby for legislation to be brought in to help decrease this activity that's destroying our landscapes for generations to come.
Thank you, Councillor Hawler, for raising these concerns. While enforcement against the problem of illegal off-roading lies with Gwent Police, members will be aware of the multi-agency approach the Council has led in an attempt to reduce the problem, which destroys important habitat, is a risk to our farming communities, increases runoff and potential flooding, and causes a noise nuisance for local communities. This council led the Shared Prosperity Fund project, securing funding for 2 police officers to take a more proactive approach in dealing with the problem. Thank you for recognising the success of the project, and I fully agree with your concerns about maintaining momentum. At this point in time, we do not know from the UK Government whether there will be further opportunities to bid for funding. If there is no further funding, officers will continue to encourage our communities to report the activity of the police, and council officers will continue to lobby the police to prioritise it, working in partnership with our commoners and other stakeholders. The police told me today that off-road biking work is still underway. They hold regular meetings with local authorities and partners to feed the results back in. Generally, they are happy with the progress. Of course, the winter months see a drop-off, but they will still proactively be patrolling and running the operations. I totally agree with you, Councillor Hawler. We've got to try and maintain momentum on this. I attended the launch of this project and I've seen the drones and everything in action. And I know in October, the police ran a week Operation Harley, and there were seizures, there was a lot of good work. I sit on the Community Safety Partnership. You can rest assured I will be raising this issue ongoing now and beyond March next year. Thank you.
Supplementary on this one, please. The heritage of art in Torfaen are of an international importance, of outstanding universal value that's put by UNESCO. And we should do what we can to preserve, which is vital for the reasons that we have discussed within the last few minutes. We must continue this for our area. Sorry, I'm very passionate about this one.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'll just repeat what I said. I'll bend every sinew in my body to try and make sure there's momentum maintained with this. And it's something that I'm raising regularly with the police, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you. That takes us to question 7. Councillor Janet Jones and Councillor David Daniels to answer.
Thanks, Madam Presiding Officer. Councillor Daniels. At last full council meeting, it was stated that there was potential interest from another service provider for the Arthur Jenkins home. Can you please offer an update on how we are progressing and what action has been taken to offer any support?
Thank you, Councillor Jones. And again, thank you for your support throughout this. So yeah, as you referenced, at the last council I mentioned that Havard, the leaseholders and operators of the home, had been approached by another company who had requested the transfer of the lease to them. This would enable them to pursue registration with the Care Inspectorate of Wales, and I explained that this was a complicated process and may take time. You'll also be aware that we had asked for an extension to ensure that the transfer process could be explored safely, safeguarding residents from any risk if the transfer fell through, which is obviously our principal priority in this whole process. The extension was initially agreed by Havard. However, concerns around the prospective transfer were fast surpassed by the detrimental impact the uncertainty was having on residents. And as a result, the impact became both Havard and TCBC's primary concern, and Havard took the difficult decision to proceed with the home closure. However, in the meantime, discussions have continued at pace with the provider around the lease and their CIW registration, and we expect the lease discussions to be concluded next month. And we hope that the CIW decision will follow soon after. Officers are in regular dialogue with the company that you referenced. I must stress, however, that it is still very highly unlikely that a decision will be reached on any new provider before the home closure on 6th of December, so our care management team will continue to support residents with their moves to their preferred alternative homes. Thank you.
Councillor John Jones, question 8, and Councillor Daniels to answer.
I'm aware that a survey has been undertaken at the Arthur Jenkins home, which should have been made available on the 18th of October. Should the survey be satisfactory to the interested party, whom I understand is Spectrum, and to you and our Torfaen officers, who will obviously have done their homework and standard checks such as feasibility studies, would the transfer of lease then take place, and would CIW be encouraged to complete registration prior to the proposed close of date of the 6th of December, thus ensuring remaining residents have a continuation of care and the staff have continued employment?
Yeah.
Thanks again, Dan. Councillor Jones, sorry. So, yeah, I mean, throughout this whole process, I think the CIW registration has been the sticking point. And as I said in my previous answer, I'm very sorry that I can't offer any real confidence that a decision will be reached by CIW before the 6th of December, as this is obviously outside our control. What I can say is that within the council, we're working as quickly as possible to support Havard and the interested provider on any transfer of the lease. Any new provider will need to give serious consideration to the findings in the survey. It's for the provider to reassure themselves rather than us that they have enough money to meet their obligations under the lease. And not only that, the provider will need to reassure themselves and CIW that they have a viable business plan that will allow them to invest in the homes that they can provide a sustainable care service. We've spoken before about the need to increase the proportion of nursing provision rather than general residential and how that will help improve the sustainability of the home. This will inevitably require significant investment, and I hope that any new provider incoming will be able to raise the funds needed to do this, because this seems to be the core issue of the future of that building. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor John Jones, question 9, please.
Thank you. My final question to Councillor Daniels for this morning is, Havard Care have 2 other care homes in the borough. In view of what has happened at the Arthur Jenkins home, are officers monitoring the sustainability of these homes, and is there any cause for concern?
So, officers routinely monitor the performance of all care homes in the borough as part of our commissioning service. This involves regular audits as well as a broad range of intelligence from things like provider concerns process, safeguarding procedures, CIW reports, and our care management team feedbacks, and of course any complaints. As well as our monitoring, CIW also routinely inspect care homes and have a regular monitoring schedule. If they have cause for concern with a specific company or a particular home, they may choose to prioritise an inspection at that home or that company's homes. Where either ourselves or CIW have concerns about the quality of care or sustainability of the care home, then we would normally move quickly into our escalating concerns process. We would engage with CIW in a two-way dialogue to agree what action should be taken to support the home. We have a robust commissioning service, and so homes do enter and leave escalating concerns on occasion. It's important that any inspections give an honest reflection of how a home is operating on a day-to-day basis, and so rightly we would not publicise whether a home is facing escalating concerns or an accelerated inspection.
Madam Presiding Officer, can I take the opportunity from Councillor Hall and myself to thank Councillor Daniels for the support that he's given us since September the 3rd when the Arthur closure was announced. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones.
Just quickly respond to that. I mean, what's been most helpful is that what you've maintained a dogged determination to support your residents and the staff at Arthur Jenkins and your community, whilst also maintaining a pragmatic and constructive approach, which has been very much welcome from my perspective, because it's an incredibly delicate situation for everyone involved, and it needs to be done in a delicate way. And I really am very, very thankful for how you've approached it, because we don't get this all the time. So I think it has ultimately been for the benefit of the people you're trying to protect.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question 10, Councillor Liam Cowles and Councillor Dave Daniels to answer.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. Can I just echo first the comments by Councillor Jones? I completely agree with those comments, and thank you, Councillor Daniels, for all your support on this issue over the last few months. Can the executive member detail what efforts have been made by the Council to facilitate a new supplier to secure the future of the care home in Blaenavon, and what the Council will be doing to support staff, residents and families leading up to the proposed closure date of the 6th of December? Thank you.
Thanks for the question, Councillor Cowles, and thank you also for your ongoing support throughout. It's been invaluable. Obviously, the trouble with having several odd questions beforehand is some of it has sort of been covered, but I'll try and cover any bits that are new. So our care management team continue to work at pace to help residents find suitable alternative homes that are a good fit and allow them to continue living the life that they want to live. As I've mentioned, we're also still in dialogue with another provider and continue to support them as they progress through their application for CIW registration. What's most important for me, though, is that any new provider is able to offer a sustainable and high-quality offer for Arthur Jenkins. It would be in no one's interest to see a new provider come forward only to find that they themselves cannot afford to keep the home open, and any future residents would have to go through the same period of uncertainty. So we'll continue to ask any provider to stress test their business plan, identify investments so that they can diversify into EMI, elderly mentally infirm, or nursing market, and plan for a sustainable future. On the question of support for staff, we're obviously being respectful of the fact that they are Havard staff and that there is an internal process to be followed. But that said, I personally ensure that those staff are linked up with our employability team, who will do their utmost to support them into suitable alternative employment as required. And I'd like to take this opportunity to pay tribute to staff members of Arthur Jenkins, who, in the face of tremendous uncertainty, ongoing uncertainty, have continued to turn up each day, put on a reassuring face and do their very best to support their residents through this immensely difficult period. I know this is more than just a job, and that the resident-staff relationship can feel as close as any familial connection. So this will be emotionally exhausting for staff too. I just want to thank them for their dedication and compassion and express my hope that they too are properly supported throughout the process.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Councillor David Thomas, question 11, to be answered by Councillor Mandel.
Thank you, Madam Presiding Member. On the 10th of April, I was told by officers that they had secured funding for the boardwalk at the Bolton Lake to replace and that work would be started to achieve this. In July, the work had still not started, so I brought this question back to full council to be informed by Councillor Owen that officers didn't realise how much work was involved and that they needed additional funding to complete the works. I was told in the same council meeting by Councillor Owen that officers had now secured the additional funding for the works to be completed. We are now 6 months on from the original promise to repair, and still no works have been started, nor have we had any communication as to when this will be happening. What I fail to understand is, you said in full council that you are committed to repairing the boardwalk. We have additional funding for this to be carried out, and that you had told officers to tighten up communication with ward members. Yet I am still having to ask questions of when this will be done and why it has not been started. Just to remember that this was advertised by Torvine Comms and other social media platforms to the public back in April that the repairs would be done.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Councillor Towers, and can I just start by saying how sorry and frustrated I am that the position that we're in. I can only apologise for the delays in repairs. I advised, as you said, in the July Council meeting that works had been delayed as a contractor appointed to carry out the repairs identified the need for additional structural works due to the extent of the damage which needed additional funding. Despite securing the additional funding to cover the costs of the increased scope of the repairs, the contractor then advised us they were not in a position to carry out the works. This then resulted in a further procurement exercise to identify and appoint a new contractor. I understand that Mark Thomas wrote to you last week to explain the reason for the further delays, And I know I said that I wanted to keep ward members updated on progress, and have personally raised the lack of communication with officers, especially after I said in full council that members would be kept updated. It should have been better, so I can only apologise for this. Officers are actively engaged in identifying a suitable contractor to carry out the repairs, and I hope we'll be in a position very soon to confirm when the work will commence. Mark has confirmed he will be overseeing this project from now on and has requested regular updates from officers to avoid any further delays. I have asked as an action to be kept fully informed and to make sure that ward members are kept updated of any progress or updates. And I'd just like to add that I do remain fully committed to get these repairs back completed to Boardwalk as soon as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Owen. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Colette Thomas, question 12, the final question.
Thank you,
to be answered by
Member.
Councillor Dearden.
Thank you, Presiding Member. We will shortly be entering the winter period, a time of year when the pressures on our health and social care systems are most acute. Could the Executive Member for Adult Services and Housing provide an update on the current rate of our delayed discharges, please?
I always wait my turn. Thanks for raising this issue, Councillor Thomas. So members will know my views on health and social care. They're two parts of the same system, and unless we can invest in preventing people arriving at hospital by offering good quality care in people's own homes with the support of communities, we'll never see those reductions that we need to see in hospital delays. So I strongly believe that if we invest the time in working together with our health colleagues, we can improve outcomes for the health service too, as well as seeing positive outcomes for our residents earlier. That will keep them out of hospital in the first place. It's still early days, but I'm very pleased to report that changes we've made to our social care system over the past few years do seem to be having a positive impact. By last month, we had exceeded our target for reducing pathway of care delays, and this month, initial figures suggest that our delays are likely to be even lower again. Not only this, the number of Torvine residents waiting over 100 days to be discharged has fallen sharply and is now far and away the best performing in Gwent. This is in no small part due to the constant hard work and dedication of our social care teams who are practicing what we preach. I cannot say often enough how grateful I am to our social care teams, our re-ablement practitioners, and all of those involved in delivering high quality care. Oh, I've just scrolled off the page. High quality care in an enabling way. It's your practice and your hard work that make our system work, and I want to pay tribute to the staff here. This isn't in my notes, but the latest check that I've had, update I've had around waiting lists is that we don't have anyone waiting to go into care homes at the moment, and I think this ties into previous questions around care homes, that we are very much seeing people wanting to remain in their own home, and that is reflecting in the market and these figures. So we currently have no one waiting to go into a care home in the borough. Now, a final note of caution: these figures can and very much will change, particularly as we head into the winter period and hospitals see people being admitted in greater numbers. However, we're heading into this period from a stronger position than previous years, as is hopefully evident, which is something that we should take the time to recognise. So, thank you for bringing this up.
Thank you. That concludes the questions. Can I thank members and officers and elected members for their contribution to those questions. Takes us to agenda item 17, Cabinet decisions of the 10th of the 9th, 2024. The Cabinet decisions start on page 285 and are for the Council to note. There were no challenges to any of the decisions. Are there any members wishing to comment or ask a question on these? Can I ask members whether they agree with the recommendations then, please? Are there any members against the recommendations? Are there any abstentions? Thank you, they are noted. Agenda item 18, Cabinet decisions of the 8th of the 10th, 2024. Cabinet decisions start on page 287 and are for the Council to note. There were no challenges to any of the decisions. Any members wishing to comment or ask questions on them? Can't see any. Can I ask members whether they agree with the recommendations then, please? Are there any members against the recommendations? Any abstentions? They noted. Thank you very much. That takes us to the final agenda item, which is the date and the time of the next meeting. For your information, Members, the next meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, the 19th of November at 10 a.m. Thank you, members, for attending the meeting this morning, and those online. The meeting is now closed.